Okay, so let's talk about something that I've been thinking about. It's a certain disease, right? One of the worst things you can do to yourself, one of the worst plagues you can get afflicted in is getting yourself attached to another person, right? It's a real disease. People don't understand this. But the moment you get yourself attached to another person, then your happiness kind of depends on the other person. So it's a bit like a disease, because then you become dependent on the other person, and that in a sense kills your own individuality. This is a disease, this is a problem that I call overconsumption of love, right? So for example, if you're eating cake, you're not going to eat it every day, right? Cake fundamentally tastes good the first 3 bites. Cake doesn't taste good after 10-15 bites, after 20 bites. You feel nauseous when you eat an entire cake, right? In my view, love should be like that, right? Yeah, you hang out with someone, but you don't get attached to them. You don't become dependent on them the same way that you don't get dependent on a cake. Yeah, you enjoy it every now and then, but you don't base your happiness on it. Right? This is something that people don't understand about getting attached to other human beings. We just dive headlong into a relationship or whatever, and next thing you know, you're sick. You're sick from the overconsumption of love, because you're hanging out with that person every day, and you become codependent on them, and in little to no time you will find out that you're sick, psychologically speaking, and that your growth has stopped, that you're no longer developing, but instead you're degenerating. The same way that if you consume too much cake, if you consume too much sugar, your body starts rotting. So the moment you get attached to someone, you psychologically start rotting, right? And when that happens, more often than not, what usually happens is that you silently watch love expire from the relationship, right? The whole facade that you built in your head about this amazing relationship, this amazing person that you're dating, all of that collapses in real time. And in almost no time, the other person disappears into God knows where. They're out of your life. And the only thing you're left with are your memories, and you're in bed sick. Sick from the overconsumption of love, from overconsumption of other people's emotions, being dependent on other people. And so if you think about this quite a bit, you will come to some realizations. You will come to some understanding of how these things are supposed to work. One of those things is that the other person had to leave, in some sense. The other person, they had to leave, because otherwise you would psychologically rot to the point of pure destruction. And so the unconscious, right, the unconscious and reality, that are always collaborating. They're always sort of controlling each other in some sense. And so the unconscious makes it such that the other person leaves, because it knows that that other person is not good for you, that for your development that other person is not good, that that person is making you rot. The same way that if you see, for example, a kid eating cake too much, if you're a parent, you're going to go take the cake away, right? Because you're like, this kid is going to kill himself if he keeps eating cake every day. So that's what happens. And when I say the unconscious, yeah, psychologically speaking, psychologists do speak about the unconscious, but it's the same thing when a religious person talks about God. So what the religious person calls God, or what the psychologist calls the unconscious, or what the scientist calls nature, these are pinpointing to the same unnameable entity. There is this unnameable entity that a religious person calls God, that the psychologist calls the unconscious, but these two terms are just pinpointing to the same thing. So when I talk about the unconscious, you can sort of think about it as God, or if you're a scientist, you can just think about it as the unconscious. So the unconscious wants the best for you. It wants you to grow. And so when you get yourself in a wicked situation where your growth stops or you start degenerating, the unconscious gives you time to get yourself out of that situation. And if you're weak enough to not be able to do that, then the unconscious painfully will get you out of that situation. Painfully. Right? And the pain consists in the fact that the other person will leave. And so then you'll start crying, you're like, oh, what the hell happened, The love of my life left me, whatever. But there was no love there, it was just unhealthy attachments that made you sick in some sense. So the unconscious comes in to save your life. When that happens, people get sad, they get angry, they're like, oh, this life is just a whole lot of BS, there's a lot of suffering, but what you should fundamentally understand is that this is good for you. That other person was hindering your growth. That other person was hindering your development. That's why that other person was removed by the unconscious. Because your development was getting stagnant. That's why God had to remove the other person from your life. And that precisely is what it means to have faith, by the way. Right? Because religious people talk a lot about faith. What does it mean to have faith? To have faith means that when God or when the unconscious removes someone from your life, you have to believe that that is good for you. Because the unconscious always wants the best for you, for your development. And so when somebody hinders your development, it tries to get rid of that person. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, people sometimes get angry about these things, but you shouldn't get sad or angry. To have faith fundamentally means that whatever happened to you in that relationship was the best thing for your development. And when that relationship ran its course, and the time for suffering comes, therefore the time for development comes, then you should gracefully accept it. Right? And so to have faith doesn't mean going to a mosque 5 times a day or, doing all these rituals that religion tells you to do. Yeah, maybe you should do them, maybe you shouldn't do them, I don't know. I don't have any expertise in that regard. But to have faith fundamentally means to believe that when something happens to you, like when someone leaves your life or something like this, then you should believe that this is the best thing for your development. The unconscious isn't stupid. The unconscious is the origin of all wisdom. God has all the wisdom. So it knows what's best for you. And sometimes it doesn't leave you up to your own choices. Yeah, it gives you choices for a bit. And if you keep messing up too many times, then it forcefully backs you up in a corner so that from there is only one solution. The only solution is that this other person will leave you. Right? The same way, as I said, like a parent takes cake from a child's hand. Because then if it leaves the child up to its own choices, the child is going to die from diabetes. And so that's something. And you should be careful, I think. And we all make this mistake, but we should be careful to not get attached to people. A lot of people you see, they get out of one relationship, they dive headlong into the other relationship. Like some blind bull that whenever it sees like a red flag, he'll just dive into that. But I'm not saying that we all can find happiness from within. I mean, it's in general very hard to find happiness in this life. This life is like 99% suffering, and maybe every now and then you feel some dose of happiness, maybe, if you're lucky. But if you don't want to make your suffering grow, then don't get attached to other people. Love doesn't mean to get attached to other people. To love somebody doesn't mean to be attached to them. To love somebody doesn't mean to be in a codependent relationship. To love somebody doesn't mean that you should need their attention 24/7. This is the road to suffering. This is the road to getting sick, spiritually speaking. You should just do your own thing, have your own hobbies, read books, I don't know, get a job, do your own things, and then you should sort of enjoy the company of the other person sporadically, I think, without really getting yourself attached to the other person. Because the moment you get attached, that's the moment you become spiritually sick, and then you fucked up. From there it only gets worse. And from there, if you do not detach yourself from that other person, then there is only one way. The road only has one end. And the end road is that you'll have to watch love expire from the relationship. And either you will have to leave or the other person will have to leave. That's how it's always going to end. Right? Because the unconscious knows that if you stay in this relationship, it's over. You're not going to grow, you're not going to develop. You're just going to start rotting, psychologically speaking. You're going to become a degenerate who does nothing but wait for the attention of the other person. I mean, that's no way to live, is it? That's no way to fucking live, just living for the other person. So you have to believe, and you have to understand that the unconscious wants the best for you. And so when it removes somebody from your life, believe that that's good for you. It's not a bad thing. Yeah, at the moment you may be sad, you'll start crying, listening to Bruno Mars, okay, whatever. Do whatever helps you. Go to gym, start benching 225, whatever helps. But deep down you have to believe that this was for your own good. The unconscious never removes people from your life that, well, maybe this is too much of a statement to make. I won't make this, because sometimes people leave your life because you fuck up yourself, right? Like if you're dating someone and you cheat on them, of course they're gonna leave. So it has nothing to do with the other person. It has everything to do with you. But even in that case, when the other person leaves, this should be a moment for you to reflect. To reflect and to grow. Right? Every time that a person leaves you, it's a good time to sit down and reflect and grow as a person. Right? What did I do wrong? Because a lot of times when you're hanging out with people, if you're dating them or they're your friends or whatever, you refuse to see them for who they are. We refuse to see them for who they are. Until maybe they leave, and then we start sort of questioning things. So you have to see people for who they are, what they need, what they don't need. And by all means, do not get attached to other people. You have to be light. Right? There is this French mathematician, Grothendieck, who writes in one of his letters, he says, if there is anything that age has brought me, he says, if there's anything that age has brought me, it is lightness, he says. So you have to be light. Don't get attached to things, don't get attached to people, don't get attached to places, don't get attached to memories. Because getting attached to the things is a sure way towards degeneration. It hinders your growth and it stops your progress. Right? If you're willing to fly, you have to let go of the ground. But if you keep holding on to the ground, you will never be able to fly. And so if the unconscious wants you to fly, to grow further and to fly into the outer horizon and to see things, then you have to let go of the stupid grass that you're holding on to. And so when the unconscious forcefully forces you out of the ground, so that you actually start growing, don't start crying. Because that's what's best for you. Right? A bird naturally has to learn how to fly. A bird that stays in its cage all its life is a sick bird. So don't reside in your past, don't reside in your dreams, don't reside in the nostalgia of your thoughts about other people. Let go. Right? One of the things that you learn as you grow older is this art of letting go. That life fundamentally is about learning how to let go. when people leave, or when you leave them, you have to let go. You cannot hold on to those thoughts or ideas. And that's when you grow. Right? That's when you look up to the sky and you fly. So that's something, right? And unless you learn how to let go, you'll suffer. You'll suffer profoundly. And you'll forever question why these things happen, why that happened. But if you actually take a moment to reflect, you will find out that those people had to live your life. They had to live your life, otherwise you would have never developed. A lot of development has its origin in suffering. It is through suffering that we learn the truth, and it is through suffering that we grow. So if you have no intention of growing in life, if you want to be a man-child who's 45 years old and who has the brain of a 12-year-old, then okay. Then go live in the past, get attached to people left and right, and just become a degenerate. And I've seen people like this. Some of the people who are very close to me, that are like 45, 46 years old, and you talk to them and they have the maturity, they have the psychological development of a teenager. For the last 20, 25 years, these people just refuse to grow. You don't want to be like that, right? This is an example of a tragedy. These people are living examples of a tragedy. So you have to be light. You have to be light, you have to let go, and you have to believe that whatever the unconscious wants is what's best for you. Right? You got yourself in some big hole from which you couldn't get out of. And the unconscious painfully gets you out of that. Don't start missing the hole. Don't say, oh, it was comfortable there, I missed this person. No, that hole was not good for you. When the unconscious gets you out of it, be thankful and move on. Right? Don't be like that stupid sheep that if you get it out of the hole, you'll go around and then dive back into the hole again. Because a lot of people are like that. They jump from one toxic relationship to the other without realizing that they're the problem, that they themselves are the problem here, that there is a lot of growing that needs to be done, and yet they refuse to grow. People who refuse to grow are like the worst people ever. The worst people ever are the people who refuse to grow. In light of evidence, in light of things that are happening right in front of their eyes, that show them that they are the problem, not the other people. Yet they refuse to grow. Right? So you don't want to be like that. This is like the one type that you don't want to be is somebody who refuses to grow at any cost. And there's a lot of people like that. They always just blame other people. Apparently, it's always everybody else's fault. It's never my fault, it's always everybody else's fault. And so these are some things to keep in mind. Right? Don't get attached to other people. It's a real disease. It's a sickness. And this sickness will kill you. It will waste your time, it will stop your progress, it will hinder your development. And if you are in this situation long enough, then the unconscious will forcefully have to get you out of it. Which means that it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt and you're gonna be crying, but believe deep down that this is good for you. So if you're somebody who went through a breakup, who lost a friend, or things happened, things may happen for all sorts of reasons, but believe for now believe that this is the best thing for you. That the unconscious has the ultimate wisdom, and so it knows what it's doing. And maybe many years down the road, when all emotions get out of the way, you can clearly see with the power of hindsight that this was actually the perfect time to break this relationship or this friendship, because then it was getting too much. Sounds good? So keep this in mind. Don't forget. Everything happens for a reason. The unconscious isn't stupid. The unconscious isn't some idiot sitting there. The unconscious knows what it's doing. And what it does is the best thing for you. Trust. Bye.